Good morning.
You weren't up late tweeting, were you? Like other people? Yeah.
No,
Sorry.
I heard
It's
about
a cheap
that.
joke.
I
Yeah.
heard about
yeah.
that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, how long ago did you start this? We never talked about that. Did you?
I started it right after the press tour for Selma. I think I started like the day after the Oscars or something,
Yeah.
which is appropriate. Yeah, after I got through that whole whirlwind. Maybe about a week after that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Was there one particular thing that you remember moving you to, get going on this particular project?
One particular thing that
Yeah.
motivated me to
Yeah.
what really was the invitation to do so from Lisa Nishimura at
Yeah.
Netflix. One of the things about making, which is something I never thought I'd experience, making a film that had some success, is that, and I had never experienced anyone calling and wanting to give me money. Like,
Yeah.
would you like some money? Would you like to make something? Like, that was
Yeah.
just a completely foreign thing to me. And but the person who asked and the company that asked was one that I had a lot of respect for. And so Lisa Nishimura is specifically from the docs division of Netflix.
Yeah.
And I can't say that I would have made this if she hadn't given me that invitation to say, think about what you would like to do and say, is there anything in the doc space? Because she knew that my very first films were docs. My first two pictures were docs.
Yeah.
Most people think I was born with Selma, but I was doing some things before then. And so with that invitation to do so, it was an immediate answer that I wanted to be something around prison, just because I feel like I grew up in an atmosphere where prison was always present, like talked about, like, where's Derek? Always locked up, or where are you going? Going to see my PO, just in my neighborhood. So it was just part of the fabric of growing up. And then when I went to UCLA and was an African American Studies major, giving that historical context and really connecting my experience in the inner city, to a lot of what's in the stock, and realizing that most people didn't have that connection. Folks that were in the community didn't have that connection, and certainly folks who were outside the community didn't.
Yeah, because it's an issue that, as opposed to something like immigration, where people can get their, their head around it, and where it's kind of branded. This is something that is just as massive a tragedy, but then people can't, so the film really helps to define that. Yeah. It goes a long way towards that.
Absolutely. It didn't start as this. It started as just an exploration of the prison industrial complex and the profit, prison for profit, punishment for profit. I was always disturbed and fascinated by and furious that more people weren't talking about the fact that, multi-billion-dollar companies were profiting off of black bodies and people from my community in prison, that someone was making money off that punishment was always a disconnect for me. So I thought that was all that it would be about. But yeah, we're in the midst of a Black Lives Matter moment, and it asks us to interrogate it more deeply.
Yeah.
And part of that was connecting the idea of prison for profit to the historical legacy of that, and what the future will be from that. And so. So yeah, I just followed my whims in making it, followed my own curiosity. Yeah. It was about 6 hours on the cutting room floor of cut pieces, more segments. Yeah. Like, you can do a whole movie on plea bargains. Right. Don Porter's done a whole movie on public defenders. Sam Pollard's done a whole movie on that reconstruction, slavery by another name. Yeah. Like, this is the primer. For folks that won't read Michelle Alexander's New Jim Crow, who won't read Brian Stevenson's Just Mercy. Yeah. But I also think there's something to having it all strung together that it did something for me. Yeah. To see it back to back and see it lined up, and you can see it all much more clearly and feel it more deeply.
And we've just had, coincidentally or not, the nationwide strike on September 12th.
Say it again?
The strike. Yeah. Which
yes. I mean, incredible. I mean, the fact that, we have incarcerated people who are striking in this country, it's not making the front pages hardly enough. It's not making the news hardly enough, whatever news we have left. And, and yeah, it's folks trying to have their voices heard around these issues. And so hopefully this can do some of the groundwork for that.
You take some questions. Yep, right there, Jim. Wait for the microphone, okay?
I don't wear skirts a lot. Is any sisters out there? Any women? Is this all okay here? Am I okay, ma'am? Okay, just making sure.
Could have got time for the microphone to get to, yeah.
Thank you for this very powerful film. I'd like to ask you how, in the spirit of James Baldwin, you were able to both feel the rage and look to the future and solution as a country, as opposed to just a racial question.
Well, just a racial question for me is hard to answer because, you know, there's no just a racial question. Like, there's no segmenting that out for me. That's everything because that's my daily experience. So that was not my intention. I'm happy that you saw it that way and feel comfortable in receiving it that way, but that's not what I was doing. And that's the great thing about film. I could be doing one thing and you can see another. And so, yeah, I think I'll just speak to what you're talking about in terms of maybe, you know, rage while making it. Many times, many editorial sessions, you know, found myself crying. There's a piece in there that I find very hard to watch. We call it Dignified Man. It's the man, and it's a whole backstory. It's its own movie about what happened to this man, but it's a very tall, elegant black man who keeps picking up his hat. Man with the hat. He keeps picking up his hat as the racists are knocking it down as he's trying to walk from one side of the street to another. I don't know if you remember that clip, and we show it twice, once during the civil rights section, then again during Mr. Trump's section. And I can't watch that without tearing up. For whatever reason, I put myself in the place. That's the clip for me where I put myself in that place. And that isolation and that, you know, being completely immersed and surrounded by hatred and the physicality of that hatred, that is really difficult to watch. And so often as we were making it, when we got to brick walls or when we had to push ourselves to go further because something was unclear or what we thought we were selling out on something, I would think of him and think about having to do justice to this story for him and people like him. So I have no idea if that answered your question. Probably not. But maybe there's something in there.
Yeah, sir.
Hi. Thanks for making this film, Ava. This is difficult to watch, but very relevant at this time, so thank you very much. I just saw Birth of Nation yesterday and this today. And as a man who moved into
You're
this
having a tough week.
So as a man who moved to this country from a country which was slave 70 years ago and thinking of this is a great country to be and making a decision to live here, and you see this, you see the history, you see everything that has happened and that is happening right now. How do you live with it? I mean, you're surrounded with that even now. How do you live with it? And as an artist, what role do you think we need to play to bring a change?
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. Things are hard, but comparatively, I feel like we have it good. I think of my grandmother who was born and raised in South Central LA, and her mother, and the segregated this segregated West, which we don't hear a lot about. We usually hear that about in the South, but after the Great Migration, when my great-grandmother came from Texas, some of the stories about what she experienced in Los Angeles, in South Central Los Angeles, and Central Avenue, I feel that I cannot be completely pessimistic about things. I cannot be completely negative about it. I can be, discerning. I can analyze. I can push. I can be uncompromising and wanting better. But I am not in a place of saying that we are in we are in the place of our mothers and our grandmothers and our great-grandmothers, because I'm a student of history, and I know that not to be true. I know that I live differently and move more freely than everyone in my family before me. As a black woman filmmaker, I move and can do things different than black women filmmakers who even came around 10 years ago. So there is improvement happening. It's coming at a snail's pace, and while it is moving along at that pace, people are dying and being murdered. So it is urgent, but I can't just rage all the time. It's the very reason why, and I'm glad some folks stayed to the very end, the credit sequence is about black joy, because black trauma is not our life, right? We are survivors, as many, many different kinds of people are. Where are you from? Right, so some of what you're seeing here is not, I think it's, we have these kinds of hardships around the world, and different people are affected by injustice and oppression in different ways. And so, yeah, the black joy in the sequence was really important. I remember the first time I showed it to you, that wasn't there. And initially that credit sequence was each of the talking heads, I hate telling that, but each of our analysts and interviewees, saying what they did. It was a really beautiful second. Did you see that version? Saying what they did. I am such and such, and I run the grassroots collective in Oakland for such and such. And you had all of these kind of 35 plus people declaring who they were and what they did, and you heard their organizations and their names, and you thought, wow, that's fantastic. But it let me off the hook, because after I watch the film, I see that credit sequence and I think, oh, they've got it. They're all gonna fix this. And I just wanted us to leave feeling on the hook for something here, because this is a generations old, centuries old now problem that we allow to have happen, just like Brian Stevenson says at the end, and it is gonna require a shift in our collective consciousness in order to unravel the many, many deep layers of this systemic oppression. So I'm hopeful. I make this film in a place of hope, which is the way I try to walk through the day.
Wait for the mic.
Hi, Ava. Congratulations. It's a brilliant work. And as I often say to people, we're still overcoming, and this is just another piece of us overcoming. But I'd like to ask you a question about process. I was very impressed by the amount of archival footage that you had. Could you talk a bit about the process of attaining that, the difficulty, because you had some very old footage.
It's a horrible, pride-swallowing siege of an awful process. It's the worst. It's the worst.
Which part?
Everything about archival footage is horrible. But, as a narrative filmmaker as well, it forces me to deal with, it's interesting because you can manipulate archival footage, as we know. You can search for what you want that fits the piece of the puzzle that you need to say. What we tried to do, though, is to not cut anything that wasn't true to what it was. And with that mandate, it made it much more difficult. I knew that I wanted to keep a certain pace with this, because I thought with this kind of film, tone and pace, which was a big deal to find. There were cuts of this that are much faster than this, if you can believe it, and cuts that were much slower. And so it was trying to find how much to hold someone's attention. But also, there were places where I wanted you to sit in for a minute, and places where I wanted to just hit you with it, speed by. Some places where I wanted to kiss the issue really quickly. Some places where I wanted you to just be embraced and immersed by it. So finding all of that and finding the footage to shape that was tough. Also, in a project like this, you get to talking about something, you stumble on a new idea, and you just want to go down that rabbit hole. So part of the process was trying to stay focused on the thesis. And when but you could order some archival footage for one thing, and something else comes in that sparks your imagination, and you want to go there. And anyway, I can go on and on, but it was a lot to wrangle. And I think it was we had about 1,000 hours of archival, and that we had to cut down. It's a little more than 1,000 hours.
Costs a lot.
Huh?
Costs a lot.
It did cost a lot. Big ups to Netflix. Yeah, they got deep pockets. Thanks, Luke Cage. Thanks, Stranger Things. Appreciate it.
Yeah, back there. Just, yeah, wait for the microphone.
How you doing? Clayton Davis of WordCircuit.com.
Hello.
How you doing? Your
Retweet.
film.
I look at your tweet.
Oh, thank you. I look at yours
your
too.
tweets like I'm looking at the awards tweets.
Yeah.
You tweet me.
Well, if we have any Oscar voters in the house, you have a Best Picture nominee right there, I think. I just had a question. It's kind of personal because the film is so profound. I wanted to get your thoughts on the future and what you would want to see change, and if you really believe that our generation can do it. I'm a person who's half Puerto Rican, half black. This was my community my entire life. So I wanted to know what you see in it now and what you can see change in the future.
Yeah, I believe change comes through us, the individual. Just because, making Selma and following that history so, when you look at the civil rights movement, it was a 10-year-long movement, and it was a change that happened in the hearts and minds of people that pushed legislative, political change. I think of the way that, people in my own family would talk about and refer to transgender people. Just because it was a lack of knowledge, just an ignorance on even what it was and what it means. Is it real and what it, and now our awareness, as a culture, as a society about, the humanity of all people, particularly transgender people, and an awareness and, forward-thinking people wanting to protect that and be more mindful of what we say and what we do and how we include. And that's a shift. I really can feel that shift like in the last 5 years. That's a whole segment of people that before there was no connection to, no emotional connection to. If this can give us within a 5-year shift, maybe. Be a part of educating people to the fact that, prisoners are people, that these are black human beings, not just prisoners, not just felons, that these are people with legacy, with family. This is generational trauma. This has gone back a ways, that when you see that black man walking down the street and you lock your door, you clutch your purse or whatever, and however we feel about it. And I can't say I haven't done it either. That we have an understanding of what we're seeing and and why we think the way we do. This is one of the things that was a big revelation for me, is how so much of what we think is manufactured and given to us. The word criminal and where the imagery comes from, why we see a black man as a criminal more than a white woman as a criminal. Where did that come from? Why? Why do we think that? Trying to trace down and really find when that turn happened and what happened. And so the answer to the question is, it sounds a little kumbaya and Pollyanna, but I truly feel like if this can change people's ideas about what this all means, when you see Black Lives Matter and you're not sure, when you see that black person, walking down the street and you're not sure, when you hear the prison statistics, that you have some context for it that's emotional, and we're not all living in this fog of ignorance, which is, I think, what this country's been doing in relation to these ideas for a long time.
Yeah.
Thank you. Hi, La Pacaso, New York Amsterdam News. How are you?
Hello, how are you?
Finish this sentence. What I love about being a black woman is.
What I love about being a black woman is everything, every minute of every day. It's fantastic. It's the best thing, I would choose to be nothing else. I'm so proud of the black women in my family. I really embrace my black womanness, and I feel blessed. So that's what I love about it. Every single thing, all the time. Thanks. Man with the beard and the turquoise, is that who you're pointing to? Man with the beard and the turquoise t-shirt? No? Sorry, I tried. Kent's in control. Oh,
Yeah. Oh.
that's who you're pointing to. Sorry.
Excellent, thank you. The film is an exceptional experience, and one of the points that it makes that I found incredibly effective was pointing out that with the rise of cell phone videos, that these horrifying violations and crimes committed against black people, against people by the police, that now that we have records of them, that they're not just something that one or two people carries with them, that it's sort of a shared burden that as a people that we have to carry on a day-to-day existence and be aware of, and use that as to how we interact with folks. And I just wanted to ask you, because you had such a specific point that each one of the videos that you used was with the permission of the family. What was it like to have to contact everyone who had been through that? I mean, and it is for an absolutely noble purpose, and I believe it's incredibly effective, but just how, as a filmmaker and as a human being, I mean, just like, was it just sort of like, okay, today's the day I have to do this? I mean, I can't imagine what fortitude it takes to do something like that, to just have to have that discussion again and again and again, and just be like, I would not, I can't even begin to come up with the words for that, but I just wanted to ask you what that
Yes,
was
no,
like.
thank you for the question. I just lost my father, who was very close to, and I don't know, less than 6 months ago. And as I was making this, I always struggled with whether or not to show the cell phone video and the, liquor store video or whatever. And the deal breaker was to think, what if there was a video of his last moments? And I didn't own it, and I don't have any control of it, because all that's public domain. All those, I asked for permission of the family, but they don't own it. I could have put it in anyway, as everyone else does, and plays it on TV ad nauseum or moves it around the internet. But I mean, can you imagine the last moments of your loved one in such a violent manner, and anyone can use it and not even ask your permission? I guess in the context of my father's death, I just thought about, if there was video of those last moments in the hospital, how dare someone use it? I would be furious, and so I just couldn't. So we had to get in touch. I called the first one, and it was really too much for me to do and finish the film. So my sister Tara DuVernay, who was our chief researcher on the film and works with me on my films, took it over. And she's a mother, and she was able to have, hours and hours on the phone with the folks who gave the video. But it was so immersive when you call them. You can't just call and say what it is. You have to talk to them and listen, and so she gave the gift of this production of doing that. I spoke with everyone at some point, but the real work of it, I have to shout out my sister Tara, who did that. Because I couldn't function and do that too. It was so dark to be in the place and hear their stories, and it was like it's another documentary, really. And the folks who said no, I called someone who had originally said no. I said, let me try to call and do the final push, and I couldn't even do the final push. She said, I don't have any choice where this is, and if you're giving me the choice, I say no, because I don't want this everywhere, and I don't have a choice. And I could have used it. It's public domain. One of them's public domain. Many people own the footage. If you're the bystander that took it, it's yours. Some people have sold it to news organizations, but we didn't use it. And so anyway, thanks for asking the question. That's why I put the debate about whether to use it or not in there, because this idea of Black trauma and Black death as spectacle is a real question in the community, in the activist community. And so we tried to debate that on film.
Yeah, back.
Oh, great. I have two questions. The first one is more of a graphic question. The interviews were very powerful, but also the settings were powerful. And I'd love you to talk about how you set each talking head, as you call it, in a room with the brick and everything. And the second question is, was there somebody that you wished you could have interviewed that didn't make it into this film?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. It's very traditionally made. There's nothing too fancy in it. I was tempted to try to put some more frills on it, and then as we honed in on it, it was very apparent that there's, what are you going to do? There's nothing. Point the camera at the people and let them talk. And I'm sorry? Yeah. Yep. So the idea about the production design of where they all were, everyone in their own space, so it wasn't a shared space. And everything is, my thought was everything represents labor. It's brick and stone and glass and steel, and most of the locations feel very very industrial or about labor, to connect to the idea of the labor that we've, as Black people, have given this country, not given, the labor that's been stolen from us for centuries. And so that idea married with, where do you shoot Angela Davis? It's friggin' Angela Davis. Okay, Miss Davis, she's in Oakland. So thinking about where in Oakland, and we found this old train station that was abandoned, and was able to get access, illegal at first, and then eventually legal access to, we're indie filmmakers, we do our thing. But legal by the time Netflix found out about it. And yeah, cleaned it up, got in there, and I just thought that was an extraordinary, very regal setting for that queen and what she had to say. The prison industrial complex, those words that we use so frequently and easily, she coined that term. With a group that she founded way back in the early 70s. And so she's been a prison abolitionist for longer than some people have been born in this room. And so we just want to honor her with a great frame. Thanks for asking a very geeky filmmaker question. I appreciate it. What's that?
Yeah, was there some?
Oh, no. I got everyone I wanted. Yeah.
That's an incredible clip of Angela Davis, by the way, which I'd never seen, where she's giving the interview and he's asking her the question about violence. She says, is that actually your question?
I saw that in another doc, and I think it's important to talk about the other documentarians and authors that really informed a lot of this stuff. But Black Power mixtape, that's the first time I ever saw that footage that they found in a Swedish public radio basement. I don't know if any of you have seen that, but extraordinary footage, and so they lent us that. Yeah.
One more question. So can we go? Yes. Here we go.
Oleg Selkin, Voice of America. Of course, you are not the first filmmaker to touch these issues, and you are not the last. But so far, I'm sure you are the best. Thank you very much. My question is, I'm sure that the film will have a long and successful life. And in this regard, I'm thinking about this direct polemics with Donald Trump. I mean, it's certainly ignited by these elections, and you are evidently anti-Trump.
I am? Maybe
You're
not.
You're not? And the thing is that the time will pass and the election will be, over. And
Here's hoping.
Do you have a second thoughts that the film will go on with this kind of a temporary discussion, I would say?
Yeah, no, thank you. That's a great question. I wanted to make something that was evergreen, and that would still be relevant, 5-10 years from now. I love that it's on Netflix, easily accessible, not just in the art house theater. We all know about cinema segregation, the fact that there's no movie theater in Compton. You can't see Straight Outta Compton in Compton. You can't see Selma and Selma. You can't see, many of the films that we all love as film lovers in communities of color, because there's no movie theater there. And the closest movie theater is giving you whatever the studios chose. And, Black and brown people should have more than a steady diet of Marvel films, no disrespect to the Marvel films. And so the idea that there is a cutoff to an exposure to certain kinds of films in certain communities is a real thing. And so in grappling with that and trying to figure that out, I think that's one of the reasons why I've become interested in studio films and what I can say in that space, because I know it's going to reach people that I care about, because that's all they see. But then also things like this, distribution. I have a small distribution company. Distribution is so important. So this Netflix thing is a big thing. But with that, is it still going to be relevant next year when we know which one of the candidates is? Is it still going to be relevant 10 years from now, focusing so closely on him? You had said something about that when you first saw it. Yeah. I think it's vital to have him in there, because he's taking this country to a place that is, going to be long studied, considered for a long time. It's going to have repercussions past this moment, regardless of whether he's the president or not. Gosh, I can't believe I said those words. And so we need to remember this moment, just like we remember. We look at the Bush-Dukakis race. earlier in it. It gives us context to this moment that we're in, looking at it through a lens of race and culture. So it was a question that we had, and we played with, we'll take him out, leave him in. No, he doesn't deserve a place in this thing, such and such. But you got to show that stuff because it's too important and it can't be forgotten. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you, Eva.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you for
everybody.
coming. Appreciate it. Thank you.